Well, it's always a humbling experience for me to be in the room with so many experts with such broad experience and willing to dedicate themselves to teaching, which, like climate science, is not the best paid occupation. Teaching is really giving. It's a giving occupation. It comes from the heart. The best educators teach from their heart. I've discovered in my 30 years in higher education. And it's clear to me that that's why we're all in this room together. So our theme for this annual institute is integrating energy efficiency and sustainability into technician education. And it's really challenging, as we know, and we're going to be exploring this from multiple angles over the next few days. Larry talked a little bit about the background of ATE. It's the National Science Foundation initiative for career and technical colleges and comprehensive community colleges. It allows you to develop programming at your college. A number of you have already gotten ATE grants, and some of you are applying now. In the current condition, the National Science Foundation was expecting to have large-scale budget cuts with the new administration. Because ATE is nationwide, supports program development across the country, Congress had other ideas. And so in fact, the funding for the ATE program has been very stable for the past 3 years, and actually perhaps has grown. So where they were preparing for cutbacks and all the rest, actually Congress gave more funding to the National Science Foundation and to the ATE program specifically. So again, it's a very good program to embrace. Our vision with the Best Center, and some of you have heard this before, sometimes multiple times, but for our new people in particular, our main goal is to support the transition to high performance, energy efficient commercial buildings. And central to that is the critical role of building technicians in the transition to high performance buildings. Support the development, dissemination, and adoption of education programs at the 2-year college level, nationally, and gain industry support for our work. We're working on certifications in high performance building technician education and building control systems education. These certifications would give national recognition to the holders thereof, because currently there are no certifications that are nationally recognized in this area. The importance of buildings, 40% of US greenhouse gases are produced by buildings, and about half of that are produced by commercial buildings. And what we're seeing across the country is the increasing size and scale and scope of high performance buildings. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So the need for the Best Center, it really grew out of the notion that community and technical colleges are uniquely positioned to provide the critically needed advanced technician education in building science. There really isn't another system or mechanism or institutional strategy to do this work. Our 2-year, especially colleges, are really where this can occur. And so the role is very, very important. And how do we teach these advanced skills? You know, that's kind of the question that Beth seeks to answer and that we work on together. Address climate change. Everything is in transition, as we know. So we're right at the cutting edge of that transition. So the Best Center has 3 broad goals. Work at our level with technician education, engage industry stakeholders, and finally, try to figure out how to get high school students to think about HVAC as a career opportunity and building automation systems. How to figure out how to attract more women into this field. That's a huge challenge at all levels. Quick overview of who we are. Georgia Piedmont, Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory. Laney has been partnering with Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory for many years. Of course, the most important part of all of this is our network of community colleges across the country who are working on their programs, as we've heard this morning. Some of the benefits we have on our website: model curriculum documentation, virtual lab tours. We'll hopefully get a chance to see Bob Clark's new lab tour. Research reports. If you haven't been on the website lately, bestcenter.org. bestctr.org, sorry. Those research reports, mostly done by the building intelligence groups, are as important today as they were when they were written. Important case studies. We have community college program tracking by state for students to find your program. We support lab design, equipment acquisition, and software licensing, which we know is a huge challenge, especially for building automation systems. And we've begun to work more and more on open source, BAS, the Sedona platform, although EasyIO has now been acquired by Johnson Controls. What? Yeah, so we don't know where that's going to go, but just in preparing for this workshop, we discovered that our ALC site license was several iterations old, and we were scrambling around to update it. So licensing is a huge issue. For years, we operated under the aegis of the regional sales manager's license, and we didn't even realize it. We thought we owned a ALC license. Anyway, we also try to support you if you're applying for an ATE grant, and several colleges applied this year. And I think it's, again, I can't encourage you enough to, if you are seriously looking at a major new development in your program, to apply for an ATE. The ATE opens up or the applications are due, in early October each year. Professional development opportunities. We're also, especially for BAS, offering on-site and remote technical assistance through Brian Lovell. So all of these areas are kind of the emerging areas that we're working on. Building automation systems obviously is huge. There are billions and billions of dollars of new building automation systems that need to be implemented across the country. They're a major factor in being able to improve indoor environmental quality, occupant comfort, energy efficiency. And it's just inevitable that as pneumatic systems fail, BAS systems are going to come online. And the industry is, it's very hard to get data about, labor market information about the industry because no one will tell you how many people they're hiring or trying to find or looking for. You can count job openings, but even a company like Siemens, which partners with the Best Center, will not disclose how many technicians they're trying to hire right now across the country. And neither will anyone else. So, it's a very odd thing. And of course, there's no data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics about building automation technicians. In fact, all of the entire HVAC industry kind of gets lumped together as HVAC installers and technicians or something. So hundreds of thousands of jobs in all different aspects of refrigeration, BAS, commercial, residential. It's all lumped together in one bag. And so very little guidance there in terms of knowing what the trends are. Energy management, energy efficiency, lighting, control system integration, zero net energy buildings, microgrid technology, demand response. One of our co-PIs at Lawrence Berkeley Lab is really a national expert on demand response, and we'll be hearing more from her about where that is going, particularly in relation to the grid, because as we get more renewables online, buildings will have to actually shed and possibly increase their load and manage their load in ways they've never done before. So it's very interesting. And of course, energy storage. We're going to have a guest speaker talking about energy storage this evening, I think. And he's an interesting guy who really is looking at all of the different schemes that people are coming up with to deal with energy storage, which is going to become perhaps one of the most important questions of our time. So what we're really seeing in this field is the transition of what used to be, well, and we've been observing this kind of transition for many years. Building technicians are really knowledge workers. And we see it in so many ways. The need to use the building automation system, increasing regulatory demands for energy performance, energy conservation goals, strengthened codes for occupant comfort, and then, of course, the whole rapidly evolving technology in buildings. So the educational challenge that we have, much of the technology already exists to improve building operations. There is some new stuff coming online, but mostly it's an extension of existing. And the real issue is not creating and using new technologies. It's really how do we improve the use of existing technologies? And that's our big challenge. How do we expand our offering? How do we, in our colleges, how do we address and equip our students to use the technology that's already available. Just a quick update on our certification. Some of you are tracking that. We are working on a high-performance building operations professional certification, which would be ISO, ANSI, or at least ISO, International Standards Organization, recognized. So it would have a lot of weight and widespread industry recognition at the commercial building level. It identifies the knowledge and skills needed by technical professionals in the field. We're hoping that as we roll this out in the next couple of years, colleges will use it as a kind of guideline to enhance their own curriculum. So that's why it's important to BEST and why it's important, hopefully, to you all. We completed the DACM for this. We completed a job task analysis where you really drill down on all of the duties and tasks. We convened the scheme committee and really broke down the 117 duties and tasks and identified areas that were more senior and areas that were more at our level. Bob Clark was part of that. Ted Walensky was there, kept pretty quiet. Very strong. We had an excellent guy from North Carolina who participated. I think you recommended somebody. So it was really a good meeting. And we're continuing that process. Our next task will be to develop test writing for the certification. We also identified the qualifications that you need to sit for the test. A quick update on climate change. The most important thing, it turns out, about addressing climate change is to talk about it. Bring it into the conversation. So in response, I am doing that. Was 2019, will it be remembered as the year the world woke up to the climate emergency? Jury's still out, we don't know. Has a climate tipping point been breached? Australia today, tens of millions of acres have burned across Australia, unprecedented in history. 500 million animals estimated to have been killed. Australia has been wrestling with coal, and it's a big coal exporter. Coal is the #1 industry in Australia. So there's this kind of national reckoning that is going on in Australia. While these fires were burning, the Prime Minister of Australia went to Hawaii. And so, climate science established the central role of burning fossil fuels in creating global warming 150 years ago. Climate science is well established and indisputable. The thermometer doesn't lie. Yet there is an ideology of deregulation and self-interest that seems to drive climate change denialism that we see. Embedded in this notion of deregulation, of course, or regulation, is our historical understanding of our economic system. And because climate change is the result of an externality in the economy, it drives us into the regulatory arena. 2019 was the year that world leaders were rebuked by a teenager. Greta Thunberg, and a youth-led sustainability movement has begun. Some of the global trends of climate change. Global average temperatures continue to rise to alarming levels. Intense droughts, sunny day flooding, intensifying wildfires, extreme storms, intense deluges and flooding, all are the new normal. Global CO2 emissions hit a new record in 2019, 43 billion metric tons. If business as usual emissions levels continue, we will soon hit a point of no return, when global climate feedback loops will overwhelm efforts at mitigation. What's happening is, as we continue to delay addressing emissions reductions, it shortens the window for us to act, and it increases the amount of emissions that we need to reduce. So we're caught in this kind of squeeze. And really, this decade is going to be the decade that determines the final outcome. Where we really see it is in the Arctic, the high Arctic, Siberia, Canada, where melting is occurring at about twice the rate. Temperature increases, are increasing at twice the rate of much of the rest of the world. And the permafrost is beginning to melt. Permafrost is probably the largest carbon sink in the world. Billions of cubic pounds, or however it's measured, of carbon. And so when the permafrost melts, it will begin to release methane. Methane, as you know, is about 30 times more potent as a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. It does break down faster than the 200 years plus that carbon dioxide will take, but it is very reactive in the sense of blanketing the Earth with climate warming gas. The other big issue that we're facing is climate justice. Much of the problem, where the most severe impacts are being felt in places where there was the least contribution to the problem. So how do we address that? The UN, we're already seeing climate refugees. We're seeing them at our own border. Much of the crisis at our border, the humanitarian crisis, is really a result of long-term drought in Central America. So, for some reason, we find it hard to talk about it in those terms. But in reality, the refugee crisis is a climate crisis on our own border. Meanwhile, signs of hope on climate change. There isn't a silver bullet. What there is silver buckshot. There are a lot of things that we can do and will be doing and should be doing. And a lot of those things are right here in this room, the things you'll be doing with your students. Renewable energy costs are dropping, cheaper than fossil fuel. New technologies are accelerating. India is shifting toward renewable energy and energy efficient lighting. China is deactivating some coal-fired power plants and curbing their growth. Canada implemented a national carbon tax starting January 1 of this year. Kind of a bold move. There was huge resistance from some of the provinces, especially Alberta, which has vast deposits of tar sands, bitumen. There was almost a secessionist movement in Canada over the carbon tax. but it has moved forward. There is a new and growing movement toward decarbonizing buildings. Berkeley has already established that all new residential construction has to be electric only. The city of Bellingham in Washington has declared by municipal code that all residential buildings will be no longer burning fossil fuels. So this is a new trend that we're just beginning to see, and it's also affecting commercial buildings. Texas, which has the highest carbon use per capita of any state in the country, actually employs 25,000 workers in the wind sector and is approaching 20% of its energy consumption from renewable sources. Oakland, the town you're sitting in right now, has so far successfully blocked the construction of a coal export terminal from Utah. It's in litigation. Wind energy is outproducing coal-fired plants in Wyoming. There is an increasing recognition that occupant comfort, energy efficiency go hand in hand and increase worker productivity. And worker productivity is one of the bottom lines in commercial buildings. And that recognition is being promulgated by JLL, one of the largest international property management firms. Leading educators from across the country are gathering in Oakland, California to discuss emerging building technologies and practices, energy efficiency applications, and innovative pedagogy. Thank you. Just a quick bit on emerging conceptual trends and challenges in the decade ahead. We're going to see increased urgency about carbon tax, carbon accounting, carbon budget. How much carbon can we burn before it's too late, before the negative feedback loops overwhelm our ability to manage it? I think one of the things that Australia has shown us, and California for that matter, the fires here, is that, and Bob, you'll recognize this, in the past few years, we've talked more and more about adaptation and resilience. And I think at some point, we begin to question the fundamental premise that we can adapt to climate change rather than address it head on. And I think Australia, that's really the message I'm getting from Australia. We can't adapt. We have to deal with it. So it's an interesting shift that I think we're going to see in the decade ahead. Environmental justice, the Anthropocene, a broad recognition of our impact on the climate of the planet. This one here, this one is perhaps the most challenging of all because we don't have, our economic system is about growth and trickle-down economics. And we have to grow so that we can help people and money will trickle down and so on. And we have to keep growing the economy. We don't have a theoretical or conceptual basis of what a stable economy would look like. And in a sense, we're seeing the crisis of our economic system. That's really what all this deregulation in the US that we've seen, what it's all about. How are we going to squeeze more profit out of what we really need as a stable economic system? So it's enormously challenging, and economists are probably the last people to really try to grapple with this. We are a capitalist system, and there is only capitalism. There's Russian crony capitalism, there's Chinese capitalism, there's our capitalism, and everybody else's. And we really don't have a way of thinking about what does it mean to, what is a sustainable economy? So it's going to be a hugely interesting process to begin to think about that and deal with it. Habitat destruction, and so forth. The need for regulation. We really don't have a different option. Regulation is the only way to address the economic conditions that create the willy-nilly pollution of the atmosphere and so forth.